Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Duskana, the Rage Mother. It is a 5 mana 5/5 and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with base power and toughness 2/2. It is worth mentioning that it cares about base power and toughness, so even if your creatures are Anthem up, it will still count as base power and toughness 2/2. Furthermore, it has another triggered ability because whenever a creature you control with base power and toughness 2/2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. This cool and cute Naya commander does it all for us because it is card draw in our command zone, and furthermore it is also a finisher due to its second triggered ability. So this deck plays around a lot of 2/2 base power and toughness creatures, and due to us being in Naya colors we will use a lot of powerful synergies to accelerate our game plan and then at some point finish with a powerful attack. Aside from a normal ramp package, I have added a few creatures that are really helpful in this deck. For example, Atalan Jackal, a 3 mana 2/2 with trample and haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may search a library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. This repeatable ramp effect can definitely accelerate you, and as soon as Duskana is on the battlefield you will have a 5/5 trampler coming at your opponent's way. I've added Twitching Doll, a 2 mana 2/2, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color and put a nest counter on Twitching Doll. At some point in the game you can tap it and sacrifice it and create a 2/2 green spider creature token with reach for each counter on Twitching Doll. You can only activate this one as a sorcery. This mana dog collects counters by itself while giving us additional mana, and remember that it cares for each counter on it, so even if we add a few +1/+1 counters it will still count for its activated ability, and those 2/2 spiders that we get out of it can also finish our opponents off because they are 2/2s and at some point 5/5s. We play Solemn Simulacrum, aka the Sad Robot, but not in this deck. It is a 4 mana 2/2 and when it enters the battlefield you search a library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. When it dies you may draw a card. In my opinion this card is called Sad Robot because it does nothing more in a usual commander game than just bring out an additional land and then be a chump blocker to draw another card, but in this deck he's fighting back because on attack it turns into a 5/5. We play Intrepid Paleontologist, a 2 mana 2/2 and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. And you can pay 2 mana at any time to exile target card from a graveyard. If a dinosaur card was exiled this way, you can cast it and it enters with a finality counter. If I remember correctly, there aren't any dinosaurs in this deck, but I still have added this mana dog to have some graveyard hate if you are matched up against a reanimator strategy. We play Goblin Anarchomancer, a 2 mana 2/2 and each spell you cast that's red or green costs 1 less to cast. Last but not least, I have added Knight of the White Orchid, a 2 mana 2/2 with first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you may search a library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle. Remember that the land enters the battlefield untapped, so you might be able to still go for a follow-up or have some interaction ready. This was our RAM package, and now let's talk about a few creatures that can definitely help us to win the game. We play Manglehorn, a 3 mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield you may destroy target artifact. In addition to that, it is also a nice dex piece because artifacts your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Born Rife definitely can be a game finisher in this deck. It is a 3 mana 2/2 with trample, and when it deals combat damage to a player, put a token that's a copy of Spawn Rife onto the battlefield. On attack with Duskana out it will be a 5/5 trample, so you should be in the clear to create another token. We play Kudo, King Among Bears, a 2 mana 2/2, and other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. I have added this card simply so that your opponent's creatures are 2/2s, so even if they bring out a few bigger threats you can still overrun them. We play Laelia, the Blade Reforged, a 3 mana 2/2 with haste, and when it attacks, exile the top card of your library and you may play that card this turn. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on Laelia. This hasty attacker will also be a 5/5 and will also give you some impulse advantage. We play Rampaging Jarguai, a 3 mana and X 2/2 with vigilance and trample, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, destroy any number of target artifacts and or enchantments with total mana value X or less. A game finisher can be Skyhunter Strike Force, a 3 mana 2/2 with flying and melee, so whenever this creature attacks it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attack this combat. It has a dead deadly synergy with Duskana because it also has Lieutenant, so as long as you control your commander, other creatures you control have melee. Due to us being in Naya colors and Duskana also having a powerful ETB trigger, we play a few flicker effects. We play Parting Gust, a 2 mana instant, and you can gift a tapped fish to an opponent. You exile target non-token creature, and if the gift wasn't promised, return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. The Charming Prince definitely took his pre-workout in this deck. It is a 2 mana 2/2, and when it enters, choose one, scry 2, gain 3 life, or exile another target creature you own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. Remember that you can exile a creature you own, so even if one of your opponents took over one of your creatures as controller, you can get this card back. We play Cloud Shift, a 1 mana instant, exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. We play Ephemerate, a 1 mana instant, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it also has Rebound. Due to us playing a few synergistic enchantments, we play Flicker of Fate, a 2 mana instant, exile target creature or enchantment, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And aside from Duskana, we have another very cute creature in this deck. It's Felia, Exuberant Shepherd, a 2 mana 2/2 with Flash, and when it attacks, exile up to one other target non-land permanent. At the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Felia. And on attack, this doggo will turn into a 5/5 if Duskana's on the battlefield. I have just talked about a few synergistic enchantments, so we play Wolfcaller's Howl, a 4 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, create X 2/2 green wolf creature tokens, where X is the number of your opponents with 4 or more cards in hand. The coolest enchantment in this deck is probably Wild Pair, a 6 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, you may search your library for a creature card with the same total power and toughness and put it onto the battlefield, and if you do, shuffle your library. This card tutors out close to every creature in your deck, which is why Wild Pair helps as a useful toolbox enchantment. We play Felidar Retreat, a 4 mana enchantment with landfall, so whenever a land enters, choose one, create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, or you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. A very cheap but powerful enchantment is Assemble the Players, a 2 mana enchantment, and you may look at the top card of your library anytime for some additional information, and once each turn you may cast a creature spell with power 2 or less from the top of your library. In this deck we play Chivalric Alliance, a 2 mana enchantment. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. Furthermore, you can pay 2 mana and discard a card to create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. And last but not least, we play Howling Moon, a 3 mana enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target wolf or werewolf you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And we also punish our opponents for playing too many spells. Whenever an opponent casts a second spell each turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. You want to win more? You get it. We play Overrun, a 5 mana sorcery. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. This sorcery is one of your game finishers, and it also gives your creatures trample, which is necessary in this deck. We play Kutzil, Malament Exemplar, a 3 mana 3/3, and your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Sure, this deck also contains Grand Abolisher, a 2/2, but whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Which means that Kutzil is a great protection piece in this deck and also some nice card advantage. We play Sovereign Okinek Ahau, a 4 mana 3/4 with War 2, and whenever it attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to the difference. Make sure to stack those triggers correctly, so your creatures first get +3/+3 from Duskana, and afterwards another +3/+3 +1/+1 counters from the Sovereign Okinek Ahau. The most powerful game finisher in this deck is Akroma's Will, a 4 mana instant. Choose one. If you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. Either creatures you control gain flying, vigilance and double strike until end of turn, and creatures you control gain lifelink, indestructible and protection from all colors until end of turn. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I would play in Duskana, the Rage Mother. Make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below. Let me know which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I should feature next, and then I would say see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.